basically years ago when I was working on my book, Every Deadly Kiss, I heard that in Detroit, there were more than 100,000 abandoned homes, like in the city of Detroit, plus warehouses, schools, churches, community centers. So that if you were to bulldoze one building in Detroit every day, it would take 350 years to bulldoze all of the abandoned buildings in Detroit. Wow. And so I had heard this news story that in Detroit, some killers, serial killers, were like leaving bodies behind in Detroit because they knew they'd never be found in the old abandoned homes. Oh my gosh. I was like, that's so good. Like, I have to use that in my book. So I'm like, I'm going to write a scene. I have to start my book with a scene where they find a body in an old abandoned house. That was my plot. Like, in other words, what Hope was just saying, that's what I tried to do. Well, so I started writing the story, the scene. And as I'm writing it, I was like, okay, there's two boys outside the house. And one of them turns to the other one and he says, do you have the pills? Like, and he's like, yeah, my mom never noticed. She never counts them. I have enough. He's like, is there enough for you and our girlfriends? He's like, yeah, it'll be fine. All right, let's go in. So you get that they're going to go in. I don't know what they're going to do, something with these drugs and stuff like that. But I'm like, I wonder where their girlfriends are. I don't know. Let's find out. So I'm typing. And they go inside and they call out, Lindsay, Wendy, are you here? No answers. Lindsay, Wendy. One of the boys turns to the other and says, something's wrong. I'm like, I know something's wrong. What is it? I have no idea. Let's find out. So I'm typing. And they walk and they look at the wall. And I'm like, what could go wrong? I'm like, on the wall, there are these satanic symbols, like a goat's head, an upside down cross. And this one boy says to his friends, like, I've heard about this house. We shouldn't be here. I've heard stuff happens on this block. His friend says, oh, you're just being a scaredy cat or whatever. He's like, we'll be all right. But then where are the girls? So they're like, what's the next thing they'll do? They'll text them. So they text the girls. And all of a sudden, boy looks over and he sees on the kitchen table, one of their girlfriend's cell phones is vibrating on the table. He's like, there's her phone, but where is she? I'm like, I have no idea. Where could she be? Like, I don't know. Let's type. So like, they call out for the girls, and finally they hear these moans from the basement like this, and they're like, something's going on. So one boy flicks out his knife and he goes ahead, and the other boys following him. They get to the stairs, they open the door and they start down. There's candlelight downstairs. And as they get down, he can see that one of the girls is laying there on the ground with like candles surrounding her, her lips red. She might be asleep. The other girl has her hands tied back. She's sitting by this pillar and like a gag in her mouth, and she's trying to say something. And so this one boy says, he takes the knife from his friend. He's like, go wake up Wendy. I'll help her. So he goes over, he takes the gag out, and she says, hurry before he comes back. I'm like, who comes back? I have no idea, but this is interesting. So I'm typing. And so then he like helps her, and he like slits the rope and helps her to her feet. And as he does, he notices the other girl is standing up now, and he's still holding the knife. And when he turns, he spins around, and like his friend and the other girl jump at him and go, gotcha, whatever. And I'm like, oh, so they were just faking it. And I was like, no, that's sort of a letdown. And it's like, maybe, but there's something interesting about it. I like the scene. And so I'm like, when they jumped forward, he was still holding the knife. So I was like, that's interesting. So the knife gets embedded in his friend's stomach up to the hilt, and he pulls it out trying to help, but his friend collapses on the ground. He's crying out, you stabbed me, dude, you stabbed me. Girls are screaming for help. And he's like, call 911. That's the end of the scene. So remember, my goal was that they had to find a body in a house. I couldn't even do that. That's like how bad I am at plotting something out. Like this whole scene, I was like, the only thing that has to happen is someone has to find a body in a house. It doesn't even happen at the end of the scene. And so that's basically how well I plot out stories. Can you imagine if I tried to plot out a whole book?
If If you had let the friend die, then you would have had your body in your house.
I was
Well, I
just
can't tell
going
you
to
if he
say
died
that.
or not. You got to read the book, Every Deadly Kiss, and find out.
Very nice. All
Anyway,
right.
So,
Next
but
question.
yeah, so that's why I can't plot anything out.
That's
Can't even do
awesome,
that.
though. I mean, like, I love how everybody's brains work differently. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, I pretty much consider myself a plant stir, kind of like Hope, where I have to have some kind of idea where I'm going. I pretty much organically write the scenes kind of as they come, but I really have an idea of my arc
Yeah.
and where it's going.
Yeah, I chase some rabbit holes if I don't have an idea where I'm going a little bit.
Oh, absolutely.
I will chase them.
That's
That's the best part. So I need to embrace that, right?
Absolutely.
But some of those rabbit trails can expand into something amazing, though.
That's true. That's true. I did think the other day I painted myself into a corner. I was like, now how am I going to get out of this? I was like, how would Stephen James get out of this corner? I was going to write myself into.
Yes, that's one of the most important things I think you can do is to write yourself into a corner.
Yeah,
absolutely. I try to do it with every book. I try to actually, I do, when I'm working on a story, I'll be like, now, could they get out of this? I'm like, if they could, I just write myself deeper into it until finally I'm like, literally, I have no idea how they would get out of this. Then I'm starting to find the story. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Miss Darlene, I think you are next on our list, lady.
Okay. I have to tell you, Stephen, you are one of my favorite authors too. I love the Patrick Bauer series. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question that you asked at your novel intensive course. I forget who you asked this question to, but anyway. Okay, so tell me something about yourself that we can't find on the internet.
Oh boy. Yeah, I do ask that question. You're right.
I know, I stole it from you.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I actually asked that question today. I was at this high school doing a program for a creative writing class. I said to these juniors and seniors, I was like, tell me something I can't find out about you online. Great stories. But this one girl told this story. She's like, yeah, I can't remember what happened. Like she fell and her tooth went through her lip. Ooh, and she's like, I had this opening in my lip and I could open and close it like a little piranha mouth. And I was like, that is the greatest scene. Like, I want to use that. She's like, oh, you can totally steal it from me if you want. But
you're gonna have to put that in because she's gonna read every book thinking that her lip is gonna be in one of your books. You're gonna have to put that in for her.
I'm like, the piranha mouth, like that's pretty funny and gross, but brilliant. Anyway, I don't know what can you not find out about me online. I mean, basically, I kind of think of well, when I was a little baby, I was toddling around kind of early. I don't think this is anyone online, but anyway, my mom was cooking French fries in a deep fat fryer, and she stepped out of the kitchen, and I toddled in. I was 11 months old, toddled into the kitchen, and I saw this cord hanging down. And so like I toddled over to the counter and I pulled the cord, and she was making French fries. So 2 gallons of 180-degree grease tips over the edge and falls on my face. And my dad hears me screaming. He gets me into the bathtub and gets most of it off from my face. So I don't have too many scars on my face. Just my neck is covered with scars here, and my chest, of course, my arm is all scarred, but he got most of the boiling grease off my face. So then I spent a month in the hospital, like in one of those oxygen tents, you know, because I couldn't get infections so easy. So I'm this little baby, this little 11, month-old baby, and I got chicken pox and I got all these infections, but I survived. But when I grew up, or when I got older, I always asked myself, well, why did God let that happen to me? Like, why would he let me almost get basically boiled alive? And so like, I never knew a good answer. And so then one year I was like 19, I was working at this camp up in Wisconsin, and this boy came to the camp and he had long hair, long sleeve shirts, long pants, even though it was summertime, right? And so I was wearing a t-shirt, and of course you could see the scars on my arm, my neck, and so on. And so this boy came up to me and he goes, "How'd you get your scars?" Now, sometimes I would make up stories, right? Like, oh, it was when the aliens abducted me and did strange experiments on my body, or it was a knife fight and the other guy's not out of the hospital yet, whatever it was. But for whatever reason, that day I said, when I was 11 months old, my mom was cooking French fries. And this boy flipped his hair back to show me the scar on his forehead. Then he unrolled his shirt sleeve to show me the scar on his arm. And he pulled up his pants leg to show me the scar on his leg. And he said, when I was 8 months old, my sister was cooking French fries.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, whenever anyone asks you how you got your scars, just tell them you got second and third degree burns, and like he laughed. So it was funny. It was like a thing for us, right? Degree burns instead of degree burns. And so, but later in the week, I saw him running down to go swimming with his hair flying back in the breeze, just wearing his shorts. And I remember thinking that sometimes I think that wounds happen, I think, sometimes in our lives for a bigger reason than we can see. Like for 18 years of my life, I wondered, why did I get burned? And that day I was like, maybe so that I could help this kid who had the same scars. So I don't know. I'm not trying to read too much into it or say there was like this super cosmic meaning behind, but I do feel like, honestly, that sometimes the scars in our lives can help us to heal similar scars in other people's lives. But I don't know that that story is anywhere online. So there you go.
That made me cry. Good night. All right, Miss Virginia, we are ready for your question.
Okay, well, it's nice to meet you, Stephen. This is my first time actually meeting you. And I am so happy to know that a pantser can write 30 books. That just makes my heart feel good. I just want to say that. So I want to talk to you about your research. What kind of research do you do for your books? And, what was like the weirdest research you ever did for your book?
Actually, when I started writing, I never thought I would love researching stuff. In school, I would do research, whatever was assigned. And I thought when I was starting writing books, I was like, gosh, I just don't know if that's for me. But I have found that it's super interesting. And so I do quite a bit of research for my novels. For the FBI novels with Patrick Bowers, I would interview FBI agents, DEA agents. I worked with the public affairs office at the FBI to make sure that the information I had was accurate, scientists, military officers, and all of that. And so with my new books, I've toured the Pentagon a couple of times with this new series that I'm working on, toured it's kind of a sort of secret, U.S. Department of Energy base in Tennessee. And so it's just been fascinating meeting people, and basically most people are super interested to share with you. Like I'll contact them and say, hey, look, I'm writing a book. I know you're an expert on, guns. Could I pick your brain a little bit? Or could I take you out? Like I just took out a police officer. I didn't mean that I took out a police officer. I mean, I took a police
That would be bad.
officer out for lunch.
It's now on tape.
Yeah, you might end up in one of your jail cells.
So I took him for lunch out. And so, but anyway, and just kind of said, hey, just tell me a little bit about, what it was like to investigate a murder and stuff like that. So as far as the most, would you say interesting or memorable? What was the question again, as far as research?
I think it was just the most interesting or the weirdest or something like that.
Weird was
Wow.
Something that stands out to you.
One that stands out actually happened when I was researching my book, The Pawn, which was actually my first Patrick Bowers novel, the first novel that I ever actually sold. And one of the subplots has to do with the Jonestown massacre back in the 1970s down in South America. And I was able to track down one of the 3 people who is still alive today who had survived. There were 5 that survived, that a couple had died since then, but there were 3 alive. And so I interviewed him about what it was like to be at Jonestown that day. And so at first he didn't really want to tell me what it was like, But finally, he started telling me what it was like that day when Jim Jones, you guys probably know the story, but Jim Jones had created and his followers basically all committed mass suicide and murder that day. 914 people were killed. This guy that I was speaking with was one of the head lieutenants for Jim Jones. And so when he saw what was happening at the pavilion, where Jones had basically encouraged people to take this cyanide and were killing themselves. So he went to Jim Jones and he said, I'll take all our money and I'll go to the Russian embassy in Georgetown, which was nearby, and there were connections with communism and so on. But anyway, he said, I'll take the money to there. And then this guy told me a story. He said, and Jim Jones turned and he looked at me, and I've never seen a look of pure evil before. And he said, would you do your son first? His son was 18 months old. And so he said, yes. He wasn't planning to, but he wanted to get out of there. He's like, I got to get out of here somehow. So he took the money, $1 million cash. He went to the pavilion, but it was too late. His wife had already taken the life of his son, Malcolm. And then he held her as she died, Gloria did. And he went into the jungle, he threw the money, and he just ran for his life. And so I dedicated the book to them, actually. I asked him if it would be all right if I dedicated the pawn to Malcolm and Gloria, and I put, because your story matters. And that was really one of the things that I wanted that book to encapsulate, was that the stories of all those people matter. They matter just as much as we do. They're precious lives that were lost. And so that the whole experience of meeting this guy and talking with him about the horrible tragedy that day, and just to look pure evil in the eye, I thought, what makes me different from those who do the unthinkable? Like, how do these people get to the place where they thought the most loving thing they could do is squirt cyanide down the throats of their babies? How does that happen? And so all of those questions then really led me to uncover the story of the pawn. But that was one of the most remarkable interviews that I ever did researching one of my books, was speaking with him a number of years ago for that one. Yeah.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah. And not all of my, everyone listening to this now is like, Steve, your stories are so dark. Not all of them are quite so dark, but that just really popped to mind as far as one of the most memorable